survived a brain surgery that was meant to save his life. Instead, it erased his ability to ever make a new memory again. Not for a few weeks, not for a few years, for the rest of his life. Every single day, for over 50 years, he woke up and had no idea what year it was. No memory of the day before. No memory of the thousands of times he'd already met the people studying him. This isn't a movie plot. It happened to a real man. And the world only ever knew him by 2 letters. H.M. Before he became one of the most studied patients in the history of neuroscience, he was simply Henry Molaison, a quiet, likable young man from Hartford, Connecticut. As a child, Henry began suffering from epileptic seizures, believed to have started after a bicycle accident when he was just 7 years old. As he grew older, the seizures worsened dramatically. By his mid-20s, Henry was having severe seizures multiple times a week, sometimes losing consciousness entirely, sometimes in the middle of everyday life, at work, at the dinner table, in public. Medication after medication failed to control them. He was, by every account, desperate for a solution, and so was his family. In 1953, at 27 years old, Henry turned to a neurosurgeon named William Beecher Scoville. Scoville believed the seizures were originating from a small structure deep in the brain called the hippocampus, although at the time, almost nothing was actually understood about what the hippocampus did. Scoville proposed something radical, surgically removing large portions of tissue from both sides of Henry's brain, including most of the hippocampus, in hopes of stopping the seizures for good. This kind of experimental psychosurgery was not unusual for the era, but the specific procedure Scoville was about to perform had never been done on a patient quite like this before. Henry consented. He simply wanted his seizures to stop. The surgery took place on September 1st, 1953. Scoville removed tissue from both sides of Henry's brain, including most of the hippocampus and surrounding structures. The seizures did improve significantly, but almost immediately, doctors and nurses noticed something deeply disturbing. Henry could hold a conversation. He could remember his childhood, his family, events from years earlier. But the moment a conversation ended, or a nurse left the room, Henry had no memory it had ever happened. He would ask the same question, minutes apart, with no awareness he had already asked it. He could not learn new facts. He could not recognize doctors he had spoken with dozens of times before. Every single day, for the rest of his life, Henry Molaison would wake up believing it was still 1953. To understand how severe this was, consider this. Henry could hold a new piece of information in his mind for about 20 seconds. If he was distracted, even for a moment, it vanished completely, as if it had never existed. He met the same researchers thousands of times over the following decades. And to him, every single meeting felt like the first. He could not remember what he ate for breakfast. He could not remember that his own parents had died, and would grieve the news freshly every time he was told. Doctors describe this condition as anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new, long-term memories, combined with a milder retrograde amnesia affecting the years just before his surgery. It was, at the time, one of the most severe and complete cases of memory loss ever documented in medical history. What happened next turned personal tragedy into one of the most important discoveries in the history of neuroscience. A researcher named Brenda Milner began studying Henry extensively, and through him made a discovery that reshaped our entire understanding of how memory works. Before Henry, scientists largely believed memory was a single unified function, spread evenly across the brain. Milner's work with Henry proved something radically different. Memory is not one system, it's several. In a now famous experiment, Milner asked Henry to trace a star shape while only looking at his hand in a mirror, a notoriously difficult task. Each day, Henry insisted he had never done this task before. And yet, each day, his performance improved. He was physically learning the skill, what scientists call procedural memory, even though he had zero conscious memory of ever practicing it. This proved that the brain stores factual memories and physical skill-based memories in completely separate systems. It was a foundational discovery for all of modern neuroscience. For the rest of his life, over 55 years, Henry lived almost entirely in the present moment. He was, by every account from researchers who spent decades with him, a remarkably gentle, polite, and good-humored man. Despite everything he had lost, he did crossword puzzles. He watched television, often the same programs repeatedly, each time as if for the first time. He lived for much of his later life in a care facility, cared for by staff who understood a truth that Henry himself never could: that his case had already helped launch thousands of scientific studies and would go on to help researchers understand conditions like Alzheimer's disease, traumatic brain injury, and memory disorders that affect millions of people today. Henry Molaison died in 2008 at the age of 82. Even in death, his contribution to science continued. With prior consent obtained through his legal conservator, his brain was carefully preserved, and in 2009, it was publicly dissected in a live-streamed procedure watched by scientists and the public around the world. Sliced into 2,401 individual thin sections, each one scanned and digitally preserved, creating one of the most detailed maps of a human brain ever created. Researchers continue to study those digital brain slices to this day. It is genuinely difficult to overstate his impact. Henry Molaison is arguably the single most studied patient in the history of neuroscience, cited in thousands of scientific papers, and taught to virtually every student who has ever studied how human memory works. Henry's story also raised uncomfortable questions that neuroscience and medical ethics are still wrestling with today. Should a procedure with such uncertain experimental outcomes have been performed on a young man simply hoping to stop his seizures? Did Henry, at 27 years old, truly understand what he stood to lose? His case became a pivotal example in the development of modern informed consent standards, alongside cases like Henrietta Lacks's, a reminder that even well-intentioned medicine can cause irreversible harm, and that consent must mean genuinely understanding the risk, not simply agreeing to a procedure out of desperation. Today, nearly every neuroscience textbook in the world references patient HM. Every researcher studying memory, Alzheimer's disease, or brain injury owes something to a man who could never remember any of it. Henry Molaison never knew he had changed science forever. Every single day, for over 5 decades, he woke up unaware of the extraordinary legacy he was building. One 20-second memory at a time. If stories like this fascinate you, subscribe. Every week, we dig into the strangest true stories medicine has ever recorded.